This is Savage Insomniac Radio. What episode is this? Is this 19?
19.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Stanford prison experiment. I'll be careful. It could be a traumatic subject matter. I'm assuming anyone who can't handle that type of matter might want to bow out right now. Maybe return. I don't know. I can try to... If you return at minute 20, it might be more of a discussion that won't bother you at all. I doubt this is going to bother you that much because I'm not going to go into too much detail. I've already talked about this. So there was a study done. I believe that was done in 1971. It's because of... I say that for a reason, but I'm not positive. Let me just check really fast. Stanford prison experiment and what year? I call this an experiment with a lot of reserve. So I don't consider stuff an experiment if it's done in an improper way or an unscrupulous way. And I feel like Philip Zimbardo violated the rules of ethics, even if the overseeing body of the IRB, what does it stand for? I don't even know. Just look at this. Basically, it means, you're not even going to get in trouble. By the way, IRB, no matter what it stands for. They didn't find him that he had violated any of the ethics that existed at the time because there weren't ethics at the time that regarded what he was doing. But basically, if you took a psych class or social psych class, you got really, kind of bad data. And that's the article that I'm looking at on Vox.com. And it is about how textbooks need to catch up. We need to update this information. I am in agreement. Not that they're the only ones. The person reporting here is Brian Resnick, in case anyone wants to look it up. So, when I first heard about this, I've talked about this before, so I'm not going to go on. I was really shocked. I was shocked that any student would just walk in and someone says, you're a guard, you're a prisoner, just go. And then I was like, wow. So they just did that, and these people just started acting like prisoners. They went into a room and they were like, I'm a prisoner. And then they just started following suit. And with guards, they started acting like a guard. They started, engaging. That's how I read it. And it held a lot of water for me as far as a situation that could occur. However, then later on, in 2013 or 12, I took a class at Wesleyan online that was free from a professor named Dr. Scott Plouse. And I found out things weren't quite the way I thought they were. It was a little bit more like Zimbardo actually was kind of got involved in a study, did some weird things, gave some instructions, about keeping stuff in order. He or his partner, one that I can't remember which one, I think it's a research assistant, was instructed to tell the prison guards, in quotes, to keep the place under control, but they weren't supposed to harm anyone. I believe they were told that. Okay?
You want me to look it up?
You can look it up if you want. Honestly, I don't care what they told, and I'll tell you why. Because they were allowed to do whatever they wanted for 6 days. The guards, no matter what happened to the prisoners in this experiment. Furthermore, participants experience extreme duress. Having to go into a place and then go to the bathroom in a bucket and be in a room by yourself is very humiliating. Probably didn't even do anything anyhow. What could they possibly have done that was that bad to lead to having to go to the bathroom in a bucket and stare in it? I didn't want to be in a bathroom for 5 minutes after I'm done. So I'm through right there. That's enough. And then if somebody asks to leave an experiment, that's it. If they're crying, they're breaking down, you just let them out. Right? That's what you do. Because that's a human, compassionate, normal, regular person kind of thing to do. Actually, it's not even normal to put somebody into a prison like that. It's not. Not really, because they set up Stanford's area, like they set up a prison area. They made up a prison area. Okay, so everyone who knows me knows like that I don't like this study, and I don't like Zimbardo, and I don't like any researcher like Zimbardo at all. I don't even respect him. I do respect some of what I saw come out of the study because, well, people got harmed for it. So I'm going to respect that. You know, and it's just, and I agree. It's this, so just a, this person, particular author saying this is often cited uncritically. I agree. And it's a subject of movies, documentaries, books, television shows, and congressional testimony. I agree. I've seen it, and it's like the findings are sort of wrong, though. This guy's saying the findings were very wrong. They were wrong, very wrong, and I agree. And here's what he says: it's not just due to questionable ethics or lack of concrete data, but because of deceit. So I'm gonna hone in on that. You're more than welcome to go. You got enough information to go find this article. The guy's name that I gave you, Stanford Prison Experiment. You're gonna find it. So I might come back and talk about that, but the reason I'm bringing up what happened in this particular thing is that Sarah and I participated in an AR research study with task force, as you know if you've been following this channel. And one of the most unfun things to do in life, by the way, is to be a whistleblower. It isn't fun. Lots of people look at these, you know, these documentaries and they're like, this is fun. It's super fun. I'll turn down that noise just in case. Thing is, it's not fun. It's not fun at all to do it. And I've already contacted well, I mean, in terms of offices, I've contacted three offices now that are governmental, and nothing. Oh, it's a 4. Because the third one gave me a contact for another one, so I contacted them. I haven't heard back. It's too hard to follow the links. AI should have an oversight. AI private research, places Meta doing the research, or Facebook, they should have oversight. They're not exempt from human research protocols and from torture, rules on torture. They're not exempt. I know this, but I'm exhausted. And I so want to be what I told Sarah. She knew the reference, that I always get it confused. Loving versus Virginia. It's a couple that stood up against injustice. I believe they were in Mississippi. I really can't remember. But no, they weren't. Virginia. You know, it's Virginia. My brain just fogged. You know, they might have had to flee and leave the state. I think they did. Yeah, but I don't remember where they went. So I watched the documentary on that one, and I watched the not made for TV. It was actually a movie.
The reason I know that is because you've told me about it.
Well, I just said Loving versus Virginia too. So I should have known it too, but they left. They had to leave. And I can't remember. I think they were able to come back. But so we were in here and it caused problems. So the kind of problems it caused was obviously humiliation. I felt humiliated. It's exhausting, just exhausting too. It felt like too much for how much you're getting paid. It really did. Like you're just exhausted, not knowing what to, no contact from the researchers, no really telling us what this research is about, what the data is going to be used for, and why it is that this stuff keeps happening. Like, why would you call someone's house and tell them, hey, you didn't do your thing? If you don't, you're going to get kicked off the project. Why would you have somebody go in and then remove your phone number when you never asked for phone calls in the first place? Or text. Maybe I somehow consented somewhere in some forum that I didn't read, because you know there's 1,000 forums in these places, these forums that are in an area that you can't even see. Like, it took us forever to find on their website where all their forums were. That's not how research works. You get told at the time, you sign off. So it was just really bad, you know, and then just being denied on particular submissions that I know I did right, or on one at least submission that I know I did right. and no answers to that. It's just, if you saw the amount of emails that I wrote, I don't even know how many I wrote to this group of researchers, just nothing back. I finally sent in the mail with my daughter a letter. I want out of your research project. When you're in a research project, they're supposed to let you out. It is, in fact, the most basic thing. I agree. But what's troubling to me is that nobody is able to take this on as a complaint so far. So I have to sound the whistle while I'm tired. And I have to make a decision. Do I want to save myself or perhaps save a whole bunch of people down the line who are going to be abused in research? By the way, these questions got asked with Zimbardo, kind of. They got asked with other researchers who did the wrong thing. The people in the research, a lot of the kids in the research felt the research was worth it. I think because they, got paid for one thing. And I don't. To me, it wouldn't be worth it. The $25 a day for that prison experiment. I know, because I was going to get $195 for the 30 days in prison at Facebook with their little gratitude study, and I didn't want to do it. So I know I'm not going to want to be in a prison for, what was it, 12 days times $25. Huh. How much is that? 10 times $25, $250. No, because $195, I didn't have to leave my house. No actual prison, and I'm already unhappy.
Yeah.
So like, the thing is that a lot of them, and this is common. So again, with the Stockholm effect. So I know this was about prison, but the person who was really abusing them was actually Philip Zimbardo. He was the person who was the captor, right? And so he put them in the situation. All of them were victims. Even the prison guards were victims, no matter what they did. I don't think what they did was right, but they were manipulated sociologically. And so the ones that did defend him, I feel that they had Stockholm effect. It's Stockholm syndrome. It's where you defend your captor. You make excuses because your captor's probably a narcissist. Who am I kidding? Your captor is a narcissist. They gaslit you. Okay, so with Facebook or with Meta, I don't actually know what's going on. I would have just written back and said, I'm terribly sorry. This was obviously a big mistake. Okay, like, I'm sorry that you didn't get approved for whatever reason. Blah, 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 blah. And then this would have been over, maybe. But because there is actually abuse, I think that's why they didn't write back. That's my opinion. Abuse in research is indicated quite easily. The person doesn't respond to you. It's not hard to deal with it. My daughter already got a response from a good researcher. They said, I don't know how to do it because I am in the academia. I'm in the academia. This is the gist. I work in a university setting where there's oversight through the IRB. I don't know, but I do know this. It should be reported. This is the gist. It's concerning. Okay, so why is it concerning? Well, it's concerning for a couple of reasons. A minority is involved, 2 minorities really, because my daughter's a minority, and plus she's a woman. Women, and also no one should get abused in research. No one should. I don't care who you are, what you look like, where you go to church, whatever. All that stuff doesn't matter. The more it adds on, if they're abusing you because you go to a special church, it's even worse. Okay, like, I'm serious. It just does make things worse. So it's not good. This is not a good situation. If anybody knows where to report private research, especially somebody so big like Facebook, please. The whistle is so loud it's hurting my tiny ears. And then I'm blowing and nobody's listening. So apparently there is, for anyone who might be interested, a new expose published by Medium. It says by Medium, based on previously unpublished recordings of Philip Zimbardo, the Stanford psychologist who ran the study, and interviews with his participants, offers convincing evidence that the guards in the experiments were coached to be cruel. Oh my gosh. Sorry about that. I'm not a person who likes to say, oh my gosh, because it can set people off. It also shows that the experiment's most memorable moment of a prisoner descending into a screaming fit, proclaiming, "I'm burning up inside," was a result of the prisoner acting. Wow. This is a problem. This is a problem on so many levels. So that's now you have bad research outcome. Okay, now you have bad. What I mean is, yeah, you don't ever want someone to be acting. That's fake. Then the results, you got to question everything. Once you find out that somebody's acting in a study, yeah, all the conclusions gone. One lie, it's over. And then this is what the person said. I took it as a kind of improv exercise. One of the guards told reporters Ben Blum. I believe that I was doing what the researchers wanted me to do. Okay, that's an effect. I talked about it in the last thing. I forgot the name of it, but that's an effect where basically, like, I think it's called demand effect. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Probably right.
So from my last one, I think I'm remembering. The findings have long been subject to scrutiny. Many think of them as more of a dramatic demonstration, sort of an academic reality show, than a serious bit of science. But these new revelations incited an immediate response. We must stop celebrating this work. I haven't celebrated it. Personality psychologist Simeon Bazir. I'm sorry if I pronounce that wrong. Simeon, cool name. Simeon Bazir tweeted. I mean, it is a cool name. Simine. That's cool. And then Vazire.
That is the effect.
I'm sorry.
That is the effect.
It is good.
Actually been concerning in experiments.
Yes. It's one that's always a concern, the demand effect. So in response to the article, he said we have to stop celebrating, this stuff. It's anti-scientific, yes. Get it out of textbooks. I agree. And other psychologists weighing in with similar sentiment. I agree. I'm not a psychologist, but I definitely agree. I mean, my gosh. And here's another one. This was published in the American Psychologist. This is since this other, I said Blum or Bloom, Blum. I don't know the name of the person, but that's how it's spelled regardless. So that should help you if you want to go look it up. There's even more evidence that the guards knew the results that Zimbardo wanted to produce and were trained to meet his goals. It also provides evidence that the conclusions of the experiment were predetermined. I'm not happy right this moment. You know why? I'm not happy because, for one, that's bullshit. To just go in and do, it's terrible. I mean, who knows what happened? Who knows? We'll never know. Not really. Honestly, I still think it's abusive. It doesn't matter. But I also don't like it because I really love the field of social psychology. Even though it's a young field, I still love it. And this is disappointing to me. Many of the classic show-stopping experiments in psychology have lately turned out to be wrong, fraudulent, or outdated. And in recent years, social scientists have begun to reckon with the truth that their old work needs a redo. The replication crisis, it's in quotes. Yeah, because they can't replicate things. It's really hard to replicate things in human research, though. I had a teacher in sociology, Ralph Kosaris, in Bakersfield, tell me that it's super hard with human beings. It's really a lot harder than it is with chemistry, where, you can pretty much, what's going to happen a lot of the time, And he said, sociology is really hard. Human beings, hard to study and hard to necessarily see the same results twice, even. So I agree with that. I listen to my teachers even when I don't necessarily like what I'm hearing, and I take it in. But I was telling him, I'm in a soft science. I didn't major in a hard science like I was supposed to. And he was like, "Are you kidding me?" Because he was actually a pilot too. In I can't think of which war. Okay, I'll leave that up. It's not your business and it's not mine. But he did make it public, so I don't feel bad about that. But there's been a lag in the popular consciousness and how psychology is taught by teachers and textbooks. It's time to catch up. I agree. I'm tired of this. I'm sick of it. So I guess they're going in and reevaluating. That's going to be very, very interesting to me because I really read a lot of those social science studies. And so I'm going to be very, very interested. I know there was the third wave, which was sort of based on this. A teacher did this experiment in class. I thought it was totally unethical.
Okay.
I think a lot of that actually did happen because it was between students. Who knows how much he exerted power over those students, and he probably did actually coach to a degree. Coach these kids into doing stuff. That was crazy. Take a look if you haven't. I can't do that one justice in a talk, not right now. But now I'll give one, because I always talk about Zimbardo. So science journalist Gina Perry found that the infamous Robbers Cave experiment in the 1950s, in which young boys at summer camp were essentially manipulated into joining warring factions, was a do-over from a failed previous version of an experiment which the scientists never mentioned in an academic paper. That's a glaring omission. It's wrong to throw out data that refutes your hypothesis and only publicize data that supports it. I agree. I think that's happening way too much. It reminds me, and I think it really kind of is, it's like the opposite side of it, of the confirmation bias. I mean, it still is in these researchers, but it's where you go looking for information that supports your publication of your data, your hypothesis. And so effectively, you're engaging in that. And then you're not only doing that, but you're like, and people do this every time that they go looking for information that supports, if they run across anything that it refutes their hypothesis or what they're thinking, they're like, oh yeah, I'm done with that. And they just walk away from it. But scientists aren't supposed to really do that. They're supposed to be more critical. So I'm not really happy. I'm not happy with what I've seen in social science, and I'm not happy what I'm seeing. AI is not it could be a social science experiment because it was called the Gratitude Project, but it looks like a data-driven project, like data receipt of data and analysis of data and scanning of the face. So I'm going to call it more of a quote-unquote hard science thing. This is a computer science thing, so definitely not social science. I don't think so, but who knows? Anyway, they do keep going. Trying to see this here. I've never heard of it. But it's several. And you might want to go take a look at this. Yeah, do you know something? I saw some, so I know I keep going. But I read a book called Mindfulness. Can't think of the lady's name, but I have it downstairs. Might even have it in this room. Now, I'm not saying that she's a great person at all. Let me see if I can find it. So do you know what book I'm talking about?
I think so. Let me pause this while I find it.
She found it. So it's Mindfulness by Ellen J. Langer. I'm actually not going to go in here and try to find the spot because I'm going to go off memory. She mentioned in one thing, and it was really unusual to me. She said that there was like this hospital where they put patients into a place and they called it like, I really shouldn't do this off the cuff, but I'm going to. If I'm wrong about the exact word, just have to forgive me. It was called the Hopeless Ward, I believe. And then her conclusion was that basically, like, these people would, the mortality rates were higher in people that were led to hopelessness, and those people who were given a plant to take care of and stuff, like, they did better. And I wonder, like, who the hell would conduct such an experiment? Honestly, a social scientist, it's a social psychologist. It sounds like they might. But this person's talking about some stuff in here, and it's stuff I've come across. So these are a couple that they have not been replicated, but these are still in textbooks. That's why I'm bringing it up. In the 90s mainly. I mean, these things were done. These results, well, it says here, these would not have been showstoppers. One. The results would not have been showstoppers. I'm trying to understand the sentence. New research finds that if the original marshmallow test authors had a larger sample size, this is a weird sentence, and greater research controls, their results would not have been the showstoppers they were in the 90s. Something about this writing that I don't like. But anyway, basically, like if they had to pass this, what's called the marshmallow test, I actually don't know what that is. I'm going to admit. It doesn't sound good. Maybe like you push into it and it kind of, you know what a marshmallow does, right? You remember making s'mores? Not good. Basically, it's got a lot of air in it. If you've ever had a marshmallow, you know what I'm talking about. But it says social priming. People who read old sounding words like nursing home were more likely to walk slowly, showing how our brains can be subtly primed with thoughts and actions. The facial feedback hypothesis, merely activating muscles around the mouth, caused people to become happier, demonstrating how our bodies tell our brains what emotions to feel. I cannot tell you how many people have told me to smile even if I'm not unhappy. I'm not actually in disagreement with the idea that one tries this. It doesn't have to be proved by science. Thich Nhat Hanh had mindfulness with smiling even when you were not happy. It might help, but why tell it as a fact? I'm just saying, it just doesn't make any sense. It's not a good idea. It cheapens science when we do this. It cheapens ideas when we do this. You leave them as a hypothesis, it doesn't cheapen them. But you do it like this, yeah. Stereotype threat: minorities and maligned social groups don't perform as well on tests due to anxieties about becoming a stereotype themselves. I've always questioned this. We don't want to succeed, so we sit there and just do bad. I know it's A, but I'm going to put C. It's my Scantron noise if you don't know what that is. 8 plus 7 is 15, but I don't want to be a successful minority. I'll just put 12. I've always questioned it. I don't know any minorities who did that my whole life. In fact, if anything, I've seen minorities really trying hard to perform well. At least the ones that were around me. Not all of them. Ego depletion. The idea that willpower is a finite mental resource. Yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of willpower, and I have a hard time believing that. Okay, I don't care. My point is that it's kind of, it's unhappy to me. I'm unhappy. This is an unhappy moment for me. And that I'm glad that they're debunking some of the stuff in terms of a scientific level. On a level of somebody who's spiritual, I'm going to tell you, like, I don't care if something can be proved scientifically if it helps. So if somebody like does meditation and they smile and they feel happier, I'm really happy with it. We cannot prove everything in science. Some stuff just is not testable and provable in science. Like the existence of God, not something testable. I remember somebody saying that. It was somebody who was actually quite a proponent of evolution. But he said he was religious and he said it's just not testable. It doesn't mean it's not true, but it's not testable. So I just think it's terrible. Because basically what they're saying is, and this is a quote, so I'll call it one. Psychologists are now realizing it's more likely that false positives will make it through to publication than inconclusive results. And let me just tell you, it's better off if inconclusive results come in with human beings than publications with bullshit. So there you are. I don't know what to say. It's my field. To me, social science is my field. So I'm gonna critique it when I have to. Because if you know what, if we don't critique our own fields, then people will just think that nobody is gonna do that. I would do that right in academia. I have done it in academia. I'm not going to sit there and revere someone like Philip Zimbardo. I've seen him revered, and I thought it was bullcrap. Now, I gotta tell you, that was worse than it would have been to step in a big heaping mound of cow crap. And yeah, I've been on a pasture, so I'm familiar with how that feels. It's just, God. I mean, I don't know what to say anymore. That's what this person says. I'm going to read the next paragraph. Nevertheless, in so many of these cases, scientists have moved on and corrected errors and are still doing well intentioned work to understand the heart of humanity. For instance, work on one of psychologists' oldest fixations, dehumanization, the ability to see another as less than human, continues with methodological rigor, helping us to understand the modern day maltreatment. And I'm going to stop right there, and that I do not want to get into the subject matter. However, it's a maltreatment of a certain group. Okay, and that's fine. And I think we are looking at some of those. Okay, I think we are looking at some of these things a little bit better. But I have to question, are we going to hear about it 28 years down the line or 40, 50 years down the line that these are flawed studies? We need to hold ourselves to a higher level. Yeah, like it says the original Milgram experiment, that's the Milgram, yeah, it's a shock study. It was flawed. And then it says it, but at least it's study design, which brings in participants to administer shocks, not actually carried out to punish others for failing a memory test. It is basically repeatable today with some ethical tweaks. Yes, and they did a lot more in those shock studies than just what was shown in the textbooks. It was just a lot. They had a lot of add-ons that once you looked at the add-ons for the shock study, you were like, well, some people wouldn't necessarily do what they're saying in those studies, because there were studies where the person who was giving the order was like not in the room or further away. And basically, as proximity got further, people were less likely to carry out these extreme actions that weren't even real. I think, unfortunately, they were trying to test what would happen if things, ethical screw ups, like, it's not even an ethical screw up, really unethical stuff like World War stuff, if it went on, what would happen? And unfortunately, I think they were trying to almost produce their findings. They were trying to do the worst things they could so that they could go, look, this is what happens when people are in power. They manipulate people. But all they showed is that researchers were acting sort of like dictators. That's what they showed me. They showed me that humanity, evil does exist right there in front of you. Zimbardo. I call it the Zimbardo effect anytime I see anyone acting like that. Although I will say, since I brought it up, it looks, I hadn't found this. I don't know that I would conclude that Milgram's conclusions hold up, but he said they may hold up. Many people found demands from an authority figure to be compelling reason to shock another. However, it's possible due to something known as file drawer effect. These things they have. It's really funny. File drawer effect. Yeah, I don't know if you'd hear that in a science class. File drawer effect. It's a funny name. That failed replications of the Milgram experiment had not been published. Oh, that failed replications had not been published. Yeah, I believe that. There was a bunch of other parts to that study that didn't get published. Replication attempts at the Stanford prison study, on the other hand, have been a mess. They have. It didn't work. I saw it. I think there was one in the UK. It didn't work. Yeah, if you're gonna you can't have like planned stuff or anarchy the way they did. Like, that's not a study. It's not a study. It's like creating a really bad environment. Anyway, I may want to listen to those students talk. It's hard to say whether they're even telling the truth, though, in the Stanford prison experiment. Because you'll defend your captor. So let me just put this out there. And I know I haven't read what this guy read, but let me just put this out there for a second. Imagine you were in a study and it was humiliating to you. You got made to go to the bathroom in buckets, etc. You broke down. You were a guy. Would you rather make up that you thought it was impromptu or improv, Sarah, or would you rather tell them the truth, which is that you had a mental breakdown, were humiliated around your classmates? And yeah, I'm going to tell you, I think I might just make up and say, I don't know that I would, but as a guy, I have concerns that they might just make up that they knew what was going on. They were faking it, They were never really in distress. Yeah, hard to say. That's my critique. So This is a good article that, would be kind of interesting for someone to read, that was into social science, or even not. It's interesting. I'm not going to go into the whole thing because for purposes of this, I'm trying to point out that this just keeps happening. It just keeps happening. And now here I find myself looking for somebody to report a bad researcher to. And so, he is saying they were highly influenced by World War II. So, and that's what I had concluded. And by, they're looking at the Nazis, Nazi type behavior. So they wanted to try to show or ask. The question they were asking is really, I think they wanted to show it, but I think they wanted to ask, like, why would ordinary people allow for such weird, abusive, a whole country going down, or many countries going down with this type of awful behavior? Terrible people. I get that. But I think they were like, not only is this what we want to ask, but we're going to answer it. This is why. When these circumstances are around, it just happens. Chaos occurs and people also conform. Well, that may not necessarily be true of everyone until it reaches a point. And let's see here. Yeah, well, I know. I think it's an important question. This guy said that's an important question when it sets the agenda for a huge amount of research in psychological science, and it's still echoed in papers today. So hard to study that. So hard to study why people do what they do, but you can do it. Just needs to be done better. And I actually agree with this person. I know I said at the beginning, I'm going to land on this one more time. They seriously need to update psychology books. It's frustrating me. I actually threw away my social psych book, I think, because I was like, I don't need this anymore. It's not even telling the truth. So, yeah, I hadn't heard of this, but this is another idea. I'm sorry to keep going because I know this is long, but you can stop. I'm going to end after this probably anyway. You can stop listening. So there's a stereotype threat called the Mozart effect, and it says these ideas, like the stereotype threat, the Mozart effect, and whether there's a narcissism epidemic among millennials, have not necessarily been disproven. Nevertheless, there are credible and noteworthy studies that cast doubt on them. The list of ideas also includes some urban legends, like the one about the brain only using 10% of its potential at any given time, and a debunked story about how bystanders refused to help a woman named Kitty Genovese while she was being, a not a good thing. So it doesn't matter. It's fake. It's not real. Okay, this isn't real. And so I'm gonna say this, okay? Like there was another study called the Good Samaritan. And I think it was a bunch of students, like seminary students, and they were heading to a place where they were to give a speech on said information on the Good Samaritan from the Bible, that story. Anyway, on the way there, I think there were different obstacles, but one was they had to walk over a person that wasn't moving, I think. I'm almost positive because I've read this a number of times. And, I think most of the people went over those obstacles and went and gave their speech on the Good Samaritan. However, they later discussed about possible reasons people did this. Like, potentially that they just were so hurried. You know what I mean? Like I'd have to look it up. And you could too, but there were many, many reasons given other than that they were just purely mean people for why they stepped over a person. And there were also different things that I didn't read in my textbook about that event. I read it, well, the first time I ever read about this was in like 89 or 90, And I didn't read about the other stuff until 2012. So that gives you an idea how many years went by. Anyway, all these, like what I read about above, that was not real. And all these social studies, social science studies, they're they're not real. They make the stuff up for the study. They have to. But we do have to wonder how much deceit should be used in a study. Can't you kind of be clever about it and maybe not use too much deceit? Anyway, I have heard a number of people rattling off things, like they'll say, oh, blah, 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 about something. And I honestly have to say, I don't think that these things are really being adequately studied. So here's a little list, and I don't know. I'm not really big on putting the links in the down below because I know I'm probably going to forget, or pictures. But I've given you the site for this one, so you could go there if you wanted to. You probably already Googled it if you're listening to this, but like they have all these different issues. So the researchers rated the texts on how they handled these contested issues. The results found a troubling amount of bias coverage on many of the topic areas. So anyone who's been a critic of social psychology or sociology or psychology is listening will probably be happy with me right now. So yeah, I'm glad you're happy, Amy, if you're listening. So media violence, it says not covered 0%. I don't know what that means. Sometimes I don't know what these things mean. But biased, it was biased in 50% of the studies. Partially biased, 37.5%. Unbiased, 12.5%. That's not good. I don't know what the not covered means. 0%. I think it means there wasn't any research done on it. Maybe 0%. I don't know. Stereotype threat. Actually, I'm going to not go over that not covered thing because I don't even... Well, maybe I'll go ahead and say it, and some maybe might understand it. I'll look at it. So not covered. Oh, maybe not covered in the textbook. That's what it is. Stereotype threat, not covered, 25%. Biased, 62.5% of the time it was biased in the textbook. Partially biased, 12.5% of the time it was biased. Unbiased, get this, 0% of the time. That's not good.
That's not good at all.
Narcissism epidemic, 83.3% not covered in the textbook. Biased, 12.5% in the textbook. Partially biased, 4.2% on narcissism epidemic in the textbook. Unbiased, 0%. This is a huge issue we're having in society, too. It troubles me that we're trying to make conclusions on something we cannot study. You can't study narcissists. It's super hard to study narcissism. You know why? Because narcissists think they're fine. So they never really want to be studied. They never really want to get treatment. It's a rarity. I think some of them, when they want to get treatment, I could go on and on. There's spanking, multiple intelligences, evolution, mating, antidepressants. I mean, I could have told you that. Kitty, this one, I won't go over that again. Korean POWs, Broca, I don't even know what that is. 10% myth. Mozart, I think I just talked about it up above. The statistics are not good, okay? In terms of being unbiased on these topics, it never exceeded 16.7% for being unbiased in the textbooks on any of these issues. Once. It went to 25% in the 10% myth, whatever that is. But for the most part, it never exceeded 12.5%. That was what I saw the most. I saw one time 16.7%, one time 25%. I see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 times that it's unbiased 0% of the time.
That's not good at all.
That's not good. You want to see 99% of the time unbiased. Or 90% of the time, don't you? I think so. And I know it's hard to keep bias out too. Just a kind of a reminder, like it's really hard to keep bias out of stuff. Human beings have bias. We like to think we can remain unbiased. I hear people say, I'm going to give you my unbiased opinion. I'm ready to wrap up here. What's the problem with the comment that I just made? I'm going to give you my unbiased opinion.
I can answer that.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Opinion.
Yeah, it's an opinion. It's biased by default.
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it up there. I'm so sorry that this has gone on so long. Keep blowing those whistles. But at the same time, I have to make a point here for anyone stepping in. When you're blowing those whistles as a person who's ill, like I am, and has been beaten down, metaphorically and to some degree, not even metaphorically, unfortunately, it gets harder and harder to go ahead and sound those alarm bells and blow those whistles when people aren't listening. We have to sometimes make a choice for our health and walk away from blowing that whistle. I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed this.